Dion, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
I'd love, first of all, to just have a quick intro to yourself and to Tatum and what you guys do.
Yeah, so Tatum, we were founded under the premise of how do we make Web3 easy? And so for a developer trying to build an application on chain, we offer a layer of infrastructure from accessing the blockchain to getting notifications of activities happening on chain to being able to slice and dice that chain data in very consumable ways, what people may talk about as a data API or indexing. And so we provide sort of essentially this orchestration around all things around blockchain data.
We became partners earlier this year, and I think there's around 13 terabytes now of Tatum's data on Walrus. I'm curious to understand the rationale for you guys exploring, decentralized data. What was the rationale behind it?
So if I relate back to my personal experience, I've spent a couple decades plus in companies like Red Hat, MariaDB, Liquibase, dbeaver. These were all sort of Web 2 world, very data-centric leaders in what they were doing. And so moving to the blockchain world a couple years ago, it was clear from that experience that there was basically a gap. Blockchain, for its very incredible capabilities around being immutable and the ease at which it's decentralized. These are hard things to do in the traditional web world. It's also slow and expensive and can be clunky to access the database. And so when we started having the discussions with Walrus, it was just sort of a natural aha for me. This is the bridge between sort of the, and I'm being polite to my industry, but sort of the clunky, slow, expensive nature of blockchain and the high-speed, inexpensive transactions of traditional Web 2 world. It was just very natural. And so for us, taking 13 terabytes, and this is just a start, we're actually adding more data as we speak. We've essentially built sort of this parallel data framework. And for people that need fast, reliable, because of the mathematical proofs you go through, data at scale, this is much better than going back and trying to read the history of a chain, which again, it can be slow and expensive. Over the next coming years, as agents become a huge consumer of blockchain data, they're just not going to want to deal with the way people have been consuming historical blockchain data.
So let's talk a little bit about AI.
Right.
This is something we are incredibly bullish on at Walrus. Interestingly, we see the properties of Walrus, its verifiability, its portability, its privacy, as really being key components for this AI future that we all envision. I'm curious to know what your experience has been with AI agents consuming, paying for data autonomously. What are you seeing on your side as it comes to AI and agentic?
At Tatum, we provide a model context MCP server, and it's been a huge hit. It started out as a sort of a little project. We released it, and the natural uptake was a bit astounding, and we're really happy with sort of the progress. So, all the hype around AI, there's some reality to it, in the blockchain world from the consumption we're seeing individually. It's going to scale to the point where, and the agents are going to need a different type of access that, again, I think makes Walrus a very natural fit. They want structured, very accessible, speedy, inexpensive data. And these are all things that Walrus does for accessing the same information that's, again, hard to do on a blockchain.
I'd like to double click actually on something you said earlier about verifiability. We describe ourselves as a verifiable data platform. Data that is on Walrus, you can mathematically prove that it hasn't been altered. I'm curious to know what this means to your clients and also to the agents that are accessing the data that you provide.
This is, again, if I go back to my decades of experience in the data world, this is sort of a huge persistent gap. So historically, if I wanted to sort of provide verifiable information, I'd run that through a hash, basically an algorithm that produces unique code based on what that information is. And then I could sort of recreate that hash and verifying the data. But I still need to rely on a centralized authority for that algorithm and the means to do that. We're in a world where decentralization is just, the debate about whether that's an important characteristic is over. Absolutely it is.
So Dion, we're clearly on the cusp of something very interesting with the rise of AI. What are some of the use cases that you're seeing emerge? What are you most excited about?
I think the timing for a technology like this is very interesting. The reality in the Web3 world, a lot of the use cases that had a lot of potential and a lot of promise in past years, things around everything from voting to medical records, the NFT markets, gaming, those are growing relatively slowly. We're actually seeing a concentration of our business around financial services, DeFi, things related to tokenization, stable coins. These are the areas where we're seeing the most explosive growth in Web3. What's interesting about Walrus is it's coming in at a time where we can supplant some of these slower growing use cases with concepts like proof of training models for AI agents.
Interesting, yeah.
And, in the world of copyright and lawsuits is an example, this can be a very critical and cost compelling technology to be able to use AI to its fullest.
You've brought a lot of on-chain blockchain data to Walrus. Directionally, what other types of data, maybe financial data, do you think will be uploaded in the future, and why?
Yeah, so I want to make sure we recognize the importance of that chain data. As we talked about some of the leading companies we service, they're all storing this sort of the same complete chains. And they do that because, again, going back to chain data from history is expensive and cumbersome to do. Walrus sort of bridges that gap. They'll say, okay, well, let's also look at, say, trading information, right? What's my high-low close volume for, tokenized assets through the chain. We talked about the AI stuff. And so, it could be important things like weather data. And I want to do a correlation. Okay, 3 years ago, what were these events that led to this, to drive this? This is the type of level of analysis, right? The correlations that people are going to be able to make with AI that they've never had the ability to make before.
So interesting.
And so I think sort of the range of historical data that's suitable for Walrus and being merged into smart thinking AI, it's almost limitless.
Dion, thank you so much for chatting and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.